Hello, everybody. Coming at you with hoops, and nothing but hoops. This is the Bucket Bros featuring me, Bobby Marsico, and we got here Ronnie West. We
What's going
are coming
on?
in on August 19th. We are going to do some catch up with the quarterfinal and medal rounds of the U.S. Olympics. The men's basketball Olympics. Go USA! Got a little ahead of myself there. And then we might actually talk some regular season today. Um, hey, 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 hey. We are
USA,
still
USA.
here. They have not yet canceled us, so we're we're gonna
That
keep
we're that we're
we're
aware
gonna
of.
keep filling up your ears with nonsense, whatever comes to mind, whatever's overflowing in our basketball hearts. We need you to know. So starting with the final two rounds of the Olympics, boy, our predictions did not go well. I believe we were on par with each other, saying that it was going to be some combination. I'd have to look back of U.S., Germany, and Canada, and yeah, we had some really good upsets, which we were hoping for. You always love to see it, but yeah, I mean, we can divvy this up any way you want. We can start talking a little bit of quarterfinals here. Um, or heck, if you want, we could just jump straight to the gold medal game, whichever you prefer.
No, I would say let's do a little of the quarter or of the semifinals. I think obviously the French movement being the host country, I think that energy kind of carried that team along, and you saw that in that USA gold medal game, which looked electric. That seemed like any high level game that I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. That was just the energy in that building was something I was jealous that I wasn't there and being able to be a part of that. So that was cool to see. I think their surprise win over Germany. I think just kind of Germany's uh, falling off a cliff at the end was kind of surprising. And same with Canada getting bounced out in the quarterfinal. I think we talked about it, whether it was on air or off air, about just the surprising way that Canada was playing and how they utilized their players was just interesting. Obviously, I'm sure that they have some second guessing, and we'll go back to the drawing board and for the Los Angeles games. Uh, but yeah, the U.S. kind of took care of business. The Serbia game was a little intense, like you said just before we came on. They probably shouldn't have win that game just because the way that Serbia was playing, but then they kind of tailed off, and Steph kind of all of a sudden decided to be the generational player that he is on the world stage. So I think that was something fun to watch the last couple of games. But yeah, I think at least as far as the semifinals, it kind of was for par as far as the U.S. side of the bracket. I think that Serbian game was fun to watch with Bogdanovic's doing his Mello. Even though I did see Mello in an interview afterwards, was like, "That's my son." Like, it was hard for me
Yeah,
not to smile and be
yeah,
happy for him.
in game, everybody was getting real butthurt about it, but then
Yeah,
afterwards, he's like, I had to hold it together. I really wanted to congratulate the guy.
yeah.
You
So
love to see it. You love to see it.
yeah, and so I think that at least the energy, the national pride that kind of went along, just kind of gives it that extra oomph, and it was a feisty game, and like the semifinals, maybe not. I didn't watch intently on the French Germany game. That was French Germany, right? In the
Yeah,
other semi,
that's right.
and so uh, yeah, it was just kind of confusing to see like our predictions. I had Greece and Canada and the U.S. and I believe you had Germany or Canada, Germany in the U.S. So yeah, those predictions didn't pan well aside from the gold medal one. But yeah, I think that all kind of leads up to the gold medal game, which was one for the ages. I think that uh, Yeah, or I should say, did you have any other thoughts on the semifinals, or what are your thoughts on the Serbian game or the French
Yeah.
upsets?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy. Certainly, as you said, France being the home team certainly gave them a little bit of a leg up, it seemed. Um, I call the German game an upset with France, but uh, you know, looking back, I was so high on Germany early on, and I think a lot of it had to do with their level of defensive intensity that was winning them games. It kind of it, it kind of did not display just kind of sort of how weak and inconsistent their offense was. And I think, they came out with a lot of really good team energy and chemistry. And as the tournament progressed, I think you just saw other teams catch up and really get into their game. It didn't hurt that France made a huge adjustment by really limiting Gobert's minutes in the final two matches. I think he played just a few minutes. I mean, it was almost like he was playing garbage time minutes in that semifinal game. Sorry, I think I said quarterfinals earlier. You guys know what I was talking about. Semifinal. Um, and I think he had double-digit minutes against the U.S. But overall, a good coaching move because clearly it worked out for France. Two, the Twin Towers was just congesting up the lane too much, and this really the entire Olympics was pretty 3-point heavy. So you're not going to get a lot of good perimeter defense by putting two guys who are listed above 7 feet out there. I should say listed above 7'2" out there. Um, but there was a little bit of a controversy there where Gobert was saying he had surgery in his hand, and as the coach said, no, he didn't. He just had an MRI. God, that guy is so weird when he's talking to the media. But he was also kind of like maybe not purposefully, but perhaps purposely dissing his coach after their I believe the quarterfinal game, and then all of a sudden he was playing limited minutes. You know what? I don't know. Obviously, you're going to put the younger, more versatile guy in the starting role, and again, it was a great move. I'm not going to say that Wembanyama had the most spectacular games we've ever seen, but it certainly made a difference overall. Everybody gelled a lot better. And then you said it with the U.S. Serbia game. I mean, Curry just, don't call it a comeback. Or sorry, don't call it a comeback. Curry, don't call it a slump. Um, I'm gonna eat my words for saying maybe the shooting slump is permanent on the last five, which I was hoping I was. Prove me
Those
wrong.
are like
Prove
the
me
three
wrong.
games that he was going to have the slump for, and with the
Yeah.
group play games. And I was like, all right, that was it for that. And now he's going to probably carry it on. But like we said before, I think it'll be interesting to see how teams play him. He's not going to have KD and LeBron and Devin Booker on his team back in San Francisco. So I think that'll be interesting.
Well, Steve Kerr said it best. Obviously, he knows him well, and it's not like we haven't seen it, but he steps up for big moments, and that's exactly what he did. He had, I believe, 9 3-pointers in his 36 point performance against France. I'm sorry, against Serbia, and then eight, which was only 8 field goals, were all 3-pointers against France.
France.
24 points on 8 3-pointers was spectacular, and 5 of them being in the fourth quarter. One of those being the iconic shot over Victor. That one will live in infamy, I think. Um, but yeah. I mean, it's we could very well have been talking about the U.S. taking home a bronze medal or no medal if it wasn't for that outrageous performance he had, especially with how hot Serbia came out. Jokic doing it on both ends, seriously on both ends of the floor. And then the U.S. just they came out hot in that game, but they just weren't looking comfortable. They were forcing a lot of shots. Uh, One thing I did notice about the U.S., especially in that game that stood out against Serbia, was um, the the lack of, I hate to say it, but lack of vision from those guys. I kind of felt like if it wasn't for LeBron out there was a lot of just like telegraphed passes,
There
which
was
very
yeah
much,
there was a good
very
5 to 6 minute spurt where they like decided they were high schoolers and like or were back playing pickup ball. All of a sudden, we're just it got really sloppy there. I think middle of that second quarter, and yeah, it was confusing to see because it wasn't just the starters; it was both the starters and the second unit that were coming out there and were just having sloppy play. It's like, were they out partying somewhere in Marseille the night before or something? So it was a little confusing to see and why they, but yet you never felt like it was completely out of reach. I think as I'm watching, I'm like, this is still these guys, and it's like I wasn't surprised watching that comeback the way that they chipped it away. So yeah, it was a little confusing to see them all of a sudden turn to sloppy play all the.
Yeah. I mean, it's all's well that ends well, but but boy, some nail biters there. Certainly, they were. I would say they were in control throughout the majority, if not all, of the France game. Not that not to downplay France's efforts. They certainly gave US a run for their money. They kept it within single digits for a large portion of the game. They had a few runs there where I was like, oh boy, here goes the lead. But then, it's one after another. Great play by the US. Some really big moments there. Who did you feel like, besides Steph Curry and the MVP LeBron, um, really stood out on the roster, maybe played outside their typical roles, maybe had some moments that were perhaps undershadowed for Team USA?
I wouldn't say undershadowed. I think the first one, for me, you mentioned Gobert and how his minutes, and as a Wolves fan, I wasn't surprised that the team got better when he wasn't on the floor, even though he's our reigning defensive player of the year. So it watching him play was kind of weird, but then watching Anthony Edwards and his development and him and the fact that he stayed on Kevin Durant's hip at every possible chance and moment on and off the court, like, to me that, and then watching his play and the way that he wanted to dominate that second unit, to me was something that I appreciated watching. I think there's two real unsung heroes of this team that were the glue guys, as by the coaches themselves, like Devin Booker's ability to not be the star player that he's probably been used to for the last 15 years of his life, since like sixth grade, and kind of being that defer. I'm going to be the shooter in the corner. I'm going to play defense. And just his ability to kind of shift what he's normally used to, being a ball dominant player. To me, just his ability to kind of fit with everybody on both units was something I definitely think was very advantageous to the USA team. And my other one is Bam. I think Bam Adebayo was like the stalwart there. Granted, he was usually on the floor with Anthony Davis, but I think his energy and his defensive, like, just of flexibility to guard the
Yeah,
guards and still
very versatile.
and granted, like, the French team was a very long team, so you need to kind of combat that with somebody who's fast, who can ball handle, who can handle somebody, who can guard Wembanyama down to Yabusele as well. Like, his versatility was just so key to this. And granted, it's hard to, you've got so many stars on this team. It's like they're all going to kind of fit their role. But yeah, it's sad to see like Tatum and Halliburton and all these guys that you wish they got more time and minutes. And it's a controversy or conspiracy theory that's out there that maybe we'll dive into later on that I've got that isn't a part of something I mentioned to you earlier. So I think there's a lot that can kind of go into that. But yeah, I think those three, Ant's just ability to kind of step up and be that next level star that I think we're all kind of expecting. You could kind of see that was happening, and just his happiness on the court is just something it's hard not to root for the guy. So, and yeah, Booker and Bam, I think were very key to this whole thing. Aside from obviously Steph's threes or LeBron's dominance and just wanting to take over.
Some very iconic shots that did not disappoint this year,
Yeah.
and I don't see it changing anytime soon. Yeah, I certainly second what you were saying about Booker doing a lot of the dirty work stuff, stuff that doesn't show up in the box score. Obviously, Bam doing that all the time throughout his entire career, whether it's in an Olympic uniform or in a Heat uniform. And I even said it earlier, I'm like, is he a shooter now? I've never seen the guy throw up so many 20 plus footers and
Embiid
make it
as
look
well.
easy. So, well, I don't know. I'm kind of used to seeing
I
the
was like,
ball
yeah,
end up in
you've
Embiid's
seen it
hand.
more than most.
I'm kind of used to seeing a play end in Embiid's hand and the ball just
All right.
firing through the air. It tends to work. I mean,
It's surprising that it does, though. He just doesn't look
this is
like he should be taking that shot.
no, but I mean, the guy really. If you look at his stat line, I'm
Yeah, it's hard
stealing
to
this from somebody else, but he's kind of like a 7'1" Kevin Durant. It it
a
it
little
works out.
slower.
Obviously, he doesn't. Right. He doesn't have the shooting prowess of KD, but KD's also never averaged more minutes per game than points during a
KG,
regular season. I'm sorry. I always do that. KD has never averaged more points than
KG.
minutes.
You
Oh,
did
I'm
it
so
again.
sorry. Are you saying KG? I'm saying KD. I'm saying KD.
You're saying he's like Kevin Durant?
If you look at his stat line, if you're just looking at the shooting stats, it's almost like having a Kevin Durant on the floor. It's a guy who's shooting into the 50s overall field goal percentage, about 40% from three, and 80s, high 80s from the free throw line, and doing it at a really high clip, at like a really
I
high
don't
volume
have.
rather.
I'll have to take this. I'll have to take a look at the stats in a second.
Sorry,
Last
we
thing
weren't
I'll
supposed
say.
to launch into an Embiid tangent, but
Last thing I'll say on the gold medal game, the notes that I had. One, the first thing I'm looking here is a very sloppy Embiid in the beginning and in the first half. France was not afraid. Wemby looked like he really wanted it. The energy level was there for France, and obviously that went throughout. Um, but yeah, I have lots of Wemby down here. He kept kind of popping up. So yeah, he didn't really have a huge point game or shooting game, but he definitely filled up that you talked about possibly having one of those quintuple doubles at some point in the future. He's definitely on that spectrum just because I want to say it was like in the fourth quarter, I saw it was like 8 points, 10 boards, 5 steals, 3 blocks. And I was like, Jesus. And it's just nuts, this guy. And like 4 assists. And so I was like, yeah, there's a good chance that he's going to have that. But the 5x5 for sure, I could probably see happening this year, if not something better than that. So his development is growing. I think he's getting his confidence, finding how his frame fits into the game against granted this wasn't the NBA game, but I think against NBA players and just kind of how he fits in. It'll be fun to watch him play next year, having that experience, having a year in the NBA under his belt in this tournament. I don't think the Spurs are going to be contenders, or they might nibble at the playoffs or at the play-in tournament, but I think he's one of those that it's going to be fun to watch him grow and develop over time. And it's in my head, I'm like, he's going to develop and be a better player than Zion Williamson. Is just my take that's the way this is trending. Just because unless he all of a sudden gets injury prone, but I just don't see that happening. Just because he's like a Kevin Durant to
don't
me.
say that. Don't say
Well,
that.
I'm not. I'm just saying he's like Kevin Durant. Like Durant maybe had one injury or two kind of along the way. And I think just his body type fits. And look at Kevin Durant, Greg Oden. Like Greg Oden, Zion Williamson. Those are big bodied guys that like Shaq is a
Too big for their own
rarity.
good.
Yeah, Shaq is a
Yeah.
rarity. The fact that he was able to stay healthy as long as he was and play, and every other big
Yeah.
man that size, that it's just those knees can't handle that weight. Like I couldn't handle the weight at like 220, and my knees were bad. So it's imagine being like 350 or more. So I think that's just kind of the case with what's happening with Zion. So Granted, that we
versatility
weren't supposed.
tends to win out. Yeah, versatility tends to win out when a big portion of your offensive game relies on you being a bulldozer. It's just you're going to do amazing things have at per volume the highest efficiency scoring since Shaquille O'Neal, for example, like Zion did a couple seasons ago. But yeah, you're gonna see some drop offs there, unfortunately. We would love to see it. We would all love to see Zion play, 75 plus games and then full playoffs, whatever that entails. We want that, please. Basketball gods, rain down on us. We want that so bad, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Even though Victor, it looks impossible when he runs, like how the mechanics of that can even exist. But but what he's able to do with his game, I'm excited to see it progress. If he actually becomes a reliable ball handler and shooter, uh, we already see the groundwork for his defense. The guy's going to win a defensive player as long as he plays enough games. The guy's going to win a defensive player of the year award, maybe multiple at some point in his life. Yeah, so once the rest of it rounds out, more on that later. Both of those topics, more on those later. We'll get into it a little bit. I will say, out of LeBron, KD, and Steph, who is most likely to be on the 2028 U.S. Men's Basketball Olympic team? And not KG, KD this time. Maybe KG.
No,
You could throw.
I don't. As much as I would love to see Kevin Garnett back on the Olympic team, I don't want his old knees getting hurt. No, It's funny because I was thinking this. It's like LeBron makes the most sense. Like that he would just like. I feel like I told you yesterday or whenever I texted you. I feel like Durant's got 2 years left. This felt almost like Durant was getting his flowers. Like everybody was kind of making sure that they were like, yeah, Durant was my favorite player. Like this is somebody that I always wanted to meet and be around. I respect his game. So I don't see the Suns doing something spectacular this year. If they do, that's great. But I still, even if they win, I feel like that might be like, all right, I'm out of here. Like that's a great way to end it. But to me, I just don't see Durant lasting more than 2 years. Curry, I just feel like he's going to get hurt again at some point just because of the way he plays and his energy level. I just think there's going to be something where he breaks a wrist or does something where he just can't come back in the next 4 years and at the level that he wants to be at. I think it's just one of those when you're a great player and if all of a sudden he can't shoot over, like we talked about before, if he can't hit 30% from three or something and he's struggling, I just think he's just going to be like, all right, I'm done. Like probably mid-season or even something like that. It's like, what else does he have to prove? But LeBron, I just think why wouldn't he come back at 43? I think it would be if he's 39 right now.
Yeah.
So to me, he's no different than Brady. Like that, he would have 2 years left then after that if he was to play as long as Brady did or around that. So to me, that
Except Brady's not rushing the ball too.
yeah,
Running downfield. LeBron's still throwing down triple doubles. But
yeah.
dude, he looks like he could like more athletic than everybody on the floor. It's amazing,
Yeah,
amazing what that guy's doing.
that's totally agree. I think people were complaining that Steph didn't win the MVP, but like you didn't watch the first 3 quarters of all of the other games where he dominated play and made sure that the U.S. when they were down, maybe those 2 times that they were down in the tournament, he led the charge to bring them back. Like he led that team and was the most valuable player, and that's just how he is, and the way his dominance was amazing in the start of the comeback, and obviously you needed Steph's greatness to finish it. So, and obviously the other role players all played their part, but I think those 2 were the main push, and those 2 would be the 2 that I wouldn't expect them to be there in the next Olympics, but I feel like it would be between either one of them if something horrendous didn't happen to either one of their legs or arms at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those good points. I would pick KD, but even if he was on the floor, I just feel like more realistically, I feel like he's the youngest by just a smidge. I'd have to look that up. But even
He's yeah.
if he was there, he would be like the 12th man. I don't think he would be getting like starter minutes or anything like that. He probably would have started this Olympics if it wasn't for the injuries.
He did the gold medal game.
Oh, there you go. That's right. That's right. My bad. But consistently, he probably would have
Yeah,
started throughout the course of the Olympics if it wasn't for his late start. Um, yeah, but if anything, I feel like he would be there more in like a veteran capacity. I mean,
he's he's the
the
most
LeBron
focused.
role.
He's the only one without a family of the three. Like he's the most basketball is life. So I get that's why he would most likely be back because it's like what else? But I think he's also the one that can probably give it away the easiest just because of his mentality. I just think he has like I can go do other things and still enjoy life. Like I think that's just his, and granted LeBron and Steph are already kind of Steph's got his sitcom and LeBron's done movies and whatnot. So obviously the
That's
other
going to be on
two.
the PGA Tour soon, don't
No,
he's going to
that's
be
true. So
he has a
yeah,
second professional sports career ahead of him.
I think there's plenty of opportunities, but yeah, that's just my gut feeling with Durant. And
Sure.
we'll replay this in 5 years and see who's right.
Yeah, I mean, final thought that I alluded to this before, but the LeBron dominance at point guard, I feel like those are going to be tough shoes to fill. It's going to be a tough role for them to try to replicate in upcoming years. You know, I mean, the one true point guard on the team. Uh, yeah, but yeah, I mean, you know as well as I do that Ant
For
plays.
Team USA, I think that's what he did in the second unit. He led that team, which is the
For
LeBron
sure,
role. So I
he
think
led
that's
the
he's
offense. He definitely led the offense. I feel like you still need a true point guard next to him. Uh,
oh yeah,
you know,
that's
which
why
is
the Wolves drafted Dillingham. So
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. There's a reason, yeah, they went all in after
Yeah.
already going all in. So that will be interesting to see how that unfolds. I mean, obviously Halliburton really didn't get many minutes. He had a funny post about it, as we all know. The whole, don't do any work on the group projects, so get an A post. That was classic. Uh, so I mean, potentially him, but he's not the same type of dominant two-way player that LeBron is, especially on that stage. So it
Well,
will be
and
interesting to see.
we discussed this before too. I think we both feel like Jalen Brunson will be on that team. So I think
Sure,
there's
sure,
putting those two up top. I think would be a very fun combo. Granted, I it, it and maybe it's my own ignorance on his game. But I don't know if he's a straight pure point guard. I think he's kind of a hybrid shooting guard point
sure,
guard. So I think what you're talking about still alludes to somebody who's going to be the like captain of the offense that's not looking for their shot, that's trying to create the opportunities for the star players. I think that's essentially, in my mind, what like a point guard is. They're not essentially looking for their shot. So that's we'll see. And so, but obviously, I think that team would still be loaded. But yeah, I think they'll be, and whoever else surprises us the next 2 to 3 years, that's a point guard that we don't know about from who knows where. So we'll see what happens with that.
yeah. Um, all right. Well, one thing I wanted to mention about some international standouts during the Olympics. One name that you guys are not going to see the end of for the next 4 years is going to be our favorite, Yabusele. He got himself a minimum contract with uh, with the
Was it a
Philadelphia
minimum?
76ers.
2.1 is the minimum.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the veteran minimum is three something.
Oh wow.
But
Okay.
yeah, everything's
Maybe
going
I'm
up, man. It's
I'm
all
thinking probably NFL numbers of like 600,000. I didn't realize it was in the multiple millions to be a bench player.
yeah.
That's
Well, I
awesome.
mean, you can
Good for
get
them.
into like 10-day contracts, 2-way contracts, things like that. There's definitely different renditions. If I'm not mistaken, in terms of just minimum player uh, contracts, yeah.
No,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think he's going to be a great addition to the Sixers. You know, I didn't realize the guy was listed at 6'8", 275. Those are that's LeBron size. He
yeah.
certainly doesn't look like
That's
LeBron
why
out
he's
there,
gonna.
but
How big do you think the mural he is gonna put in his house of that dunk over LeBron and LeBron's face of like his eyes like as he's looking up? I think, and it's funny. I heard somebody like Rich Paul and the whole LeBron team is trying to scrub that video off the internet so that nobody ever sees it again.
that's
So, but yeah,
ridiculous.
good for him for getting the contract in Philly. He had an amazing. It wasn't just one game. He had an amazing tournament. Became a household name amongst any Olympic viewer just because they saw how his energy level and but yeah, I hope he exceeds. Hopefully not too well with the 76ers, but yeah, I think
Mhm.
he should be a good fit for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to go wrong with a big wing player with a lot of length, good reach. Maybe not the
High energy.
strongest rebounder, but yeah, high energy guy, can knock down threes, play some defense. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I suppose with that we can start talking about NBA basketball a little bit more. We were going to jump into some over-unders, the regular season win totals, as predicted by ESPN Bet was the reference I was using. Um, we I just kind of picked out a few of my favorites that stood out to me. I don't pretend to be a gambling man. When the sports books opened up in North Carolina during March Madness, I jumped all over that, and I lost all of that money. And my wife doesn't let me do it anymore. So uh, still working, still working some extra shifts for that one. Yeah, one of them that we can jump into, but perhaps a fan favorite out there is the San Antonio Spurs. They are listed at 36 and a half this year. It was initially 35 and a half, and I could tell that ESPN Bet, maybe after the Olympics, decided to up it to 36 and a half. Maybe they're getting a lot of popularity with that bet. I,
CP3.
oh yeah.
Sorry, dude. I'm glad you put notes because I would not have known half the players that are on these teams. So sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
What? No,
36 and a
but yeah,
half.
I mean, yeah, 36 and a half. I'm just curious because you kind of already started to mention this, how you think the Spurs might do in his sophomore season. Are you going with the over or the under on this?
So that means they'd be 36 and 46. I feel, ooh, that's a,
Now, I will say that the
I'd say
West,
go ahead.
I would say they were tough last year, and they're probably going to be just as tough, if not tougher, this year.
I, I
It's
want to
a
lean
unique
the
conference.
under on that. I feel like that's a lot of wins for a team that even with you're showing here CP3 and Harrison Barnes. Obviously, both of them are aging. They're not going to be what they once were. Granted, if this was 2016, uh, those versions of those players, I think I would probably say definitely the over. But um, yeah, I just not enough. Where else is the offense coming from aside from? If, I want to say if it's coming from Wemby, that's not the best point because even just like we showed it as the feature player, or not even the feature, but yeah, but Shule seemed to kind of be the feature player. But yeah, I think he still finished with like he had 13 points at halftime, but that's extreme for him. And I think if you're going to rely on, because like I mentioned before, a true point guard, Chris Paul is definitely going to be somebody who's looking to get other people the ball, which is good. But it's like, who else do you have? If all of a sudden he's going to be somebody that's you're going to rely on shooting threes or trying to create, uh, whether it's free throw chances, getting the line, I wouldn't rely heavily on that. So that's why I would probably go under. I probably see them as like a high 20 win team, 28 win team, I want to say. I think they were in the 21, 22 wins last season. I think they were low 20s. So I definitely see an improvement, but I don't see them making that big of a jump by almost 15, 20 games. Just seems a little optimistic for Spurs fans.
Yeah, we can't forget that Victor Wembanyama is only 20 years old. A lot of people are still trying to get into the league at that age. He is obviously
It helps
expected
when
to
you're
be
7'6", so
he's obviously expected to be the next best thing since sliced bread. And you know what? There's a good chance he'll live up to those expectations, but we're all sort of jumping in on him being sort of like falling into his greatness right away. It's going to be a process. For argument's sake, I'm taking the over on this one.
oh,
I'm taking the
why?
over. So the reason I wrote down CP3 and Harrison Barnes is because those are the veteran guys that they added in the offseason, which was much needed on that very young team. They still have essentially the same young core, and they didn't really change the roster too much besides that. Um, but I do think that CP3, do I expect him to average more than like 20 minutes a game? Absolutely not. But I do think that his locker room presence, his presence, at practice, and then just showing these guys what this behemoth, this like unicorn, this once in a lifetime player can do on the court, just by putting the ball in the right place. I I really think that the ball is just going to end up in his hands exactly where it needs to be, and I think you can expect to see his scoring average increase a considerable amount just from that. I think his efficiency is going to go up a little bit, and I think it's going to be nice to have somebody. Um, as well regarded as Chris Paul, even to young Victor Wembanyama, to just sort of yell at him and tell him like, no, you're doing this wrong. I'm sure he gets plenty of that from Pop, but yeah, he's going to double down on it. I mean, obviously Harrison Barnes is a well-rounded player. He's a winner. Again, do I expect him to play huge minutes? I mean, maybe he does, but I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the bench role for them and is just there again to be more of a veteran presence. Certainly they drafted Stephen Castle, who I mean, he looks like an electric player. They took him at the fourth pick. That was the one that they decided to keep between the two guards. We already mentioned earlier, and probably every podcast this far, the trade that they made with Dillingham with the eighth pick to the Timberwolves. But yeah, I mean, they're trying to increase their depth at the guard position. They see a guy who can handle the ball really well. He can be a floor general as well, and I think he's going to learn a lot from CP3. Now, you're probably right that this isn't going to be the breakout year for them, but
I'm I'm looking at this roster and it's hard to define. You got Devin Vassell is your 29 million a year, and then
yeah, I mean,
Zach Collins. So to me, there's
Zach,
this
let's
is
get
that
Zach Collins, baby.
that's your, and then Keldon Johnson. Like those are your three players that we haven't mentioned that make over $5 million a year, which essentially is the veteran minimum. So it's rough sailing when Harrison Barnes, you're going to rely a lot on him.
Well, one good thing for Spurs fans this year is Jeremy Sochan is not gonna he's not gonna have the ball in his hands nearly as much this year, and I think there's going to be a lot less chaos. We have to remember that the minutes were Victor's minutes were positive last year. If you can accentuate that, because that's obviously what they're trying to do. They're trying to funnel all of
Oh
this
yeah,
into one thing, and that's growing this guy, and hopefully, your younger talent with him as well, and keeping some continuity with that, not just focus on one guy, um, but I do think I wouldn't be surprised if we see some winning streaks this year from the Spurs. Surprising winning streaks. Enough to get them over the hump. Enough to at least let them sniff at the plan and really try to make a push.
we'll see. Who you got next?
uh, All right, let's just go down the line. I wasn't going for the flashiest teams here. There's no
No,
purple
you
and
weren't.
gold on this list. But I'm I'm bringing this
You
one
weren't.
back home.
This is a gritty. This is a gritty list, to say the least.
I'm bringing this one back home
That's all
to
right.
to Charlotte here. I think the Hornets at 29 and a half games. I think they're going to crush that. Um, the East is thin this year. People forget that, even though the Hornets obviously were a lottery team last year, uh, playing a lot of slop out there, that that ball did really, he was once again injured for a large portion of the year. They really didn't get in the flow of their offense. Miles Bridges, as controversial as he is, he's a great player if he made better life choices. Sorry, uh, Miles, but if he made better life choices, he would be making several $1 million more than a year than he is on his current contract. Um, I liked some of the offseason moves that they made. They picked up Josh Green. Uh, that was a bit of a dump by the Mavericks in a way to get Klay Thompson on their roster. But I definitely think he's going to help add some wing depth for them. Grant Williams is still there. He's not been a he's not really made a name for himself in the past year, but he definitely fills out a good roster spot there. I'm really excited to see Brandon Miller's sophomore season. Um, I I was definitely proven wrong. I thought for sure Scoot Henderson was the obvious number two pick. The Hornets thought otherwise, and for the first time in a while, I think they chose well. There's still all of Scoot Henderson's career for him to prove me right, I guess, prove me wrong in a backslide kind of way. But uh, but yeah, they picked a very versatile wing player who God, he just looks so smooth when he's shooting the ball. I think he's going to be easily a year after year 40% three-point shooter, especially if he has a good point guard in the team, which he does. I just wanted to put Vasily Milicic's name out there just because he had some great highlights for Serbia. Um,
Well, I was gonna say,
and
wasn't JT Thor on the South Sudan team? Thor,
uh,
or was he on another team? I can't. Let me look and see. I
I think
no,
I
never
don't know if
mind.
it was
It
him.
might
I
be
don't
a
think it
different.
was him.
He's from Alaska
Yeah, yeah,
though.
yeah.
That's so that's surprising. Uh, but no, I said I can't disagree with you. I think they're going to win over 30 games this year. This team looks good if LaMelo comes back and is healthy and is at least the normal version of himself. Doesn't need to be anything special. Uh, I think
Yeah.
any team that has Seth Curry and Taj Gibson on it, I think you have really good veteran depth on the bench and like in locker room guys. I think those guys those guys are going to help those young players kind of grow and develop, whether inside or outside. I think both of those guys, good work ethic. Obviously, if Taj is still existing, what is he, 50, and still
At least
able to kind of probably
maybe
pull down
60.
four boards a game. So, uh, yeah, I think just both of those guys, like you said, and a Josh Green, I think are going to go well with all of the young talent. And to me, 30 games is should be smashed, if
Yeah.
not.
A lot of it's contingent upon health. I will say that. Those
Well,
are
that's
the
with every
caveats. A lot of
team.
it's yeah.
Every
But I mean,
preseason,
I would say very heavily contingent upon health because they don't have a lot of depth in star players. Not that many teams do, but high end talent is really concentrated on one or two guys, and they are also extremely thin at the center position. I kind of left that out on purpose, but I mean, they got a couple young guys. I'd have to pull up the roster to name them. Sorry, folks. They got a couple young guys at center position. Maybe they could fulfill the role well
Nick
enough.
Richards and Mark Williams.
Mark Williams is probably going to be their starting center. So
I
I'm
don't
excited
think
to see what he does. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm excited to see what he does. But yeah, I'm taking the over, baby.
I'm with you. says
All
you got
right.
the
So,
Cavs here. We're gonna go to
oh
Cleveland.
yeah, oh
All
yeah.
right.
So they're listed at 47.5. They won 47 games last year. They won 51 the year before. I think, when obviously when these betting lines are made, it's multifactorial. It's trying to get people to bite on numbers, people who necessarily aren't paying attention very well. But uh, I think people forget that their entire starting lineup at some point during the season missed significant time due to injury. And then when he came back, Garland was just kind of a lesser version of himself. Not that we ever expected him to mesh super well with Donovan Mitchell, but I mean, we did see it work. The season before, they looked like a great team. They were in first place at one point, and the Cavs didn't really have a very exciting offseason. They kind of just went all in on their existing guys. They got extensions done with Mitchell. They're coming off of the Garland extension. Mobley got his rookie max. We'll see how that deal pans out. That's a lot of money for a guy who hasn't really proven himself yet. And then they double down on Allen as well. Obviously, of course, if you have talented players, the way the NBA is set up right now is you better pay them or somebody else will. Um, Guys aren't going to want to take short contracts for less money just to benefit a team most of the time. Um, and so you kind of have to think of them as like maybe future trade chips. And so perhaps that was some of the strategy there. But this team has, now coming into a third season of continuity. Um, they they haven't really succeeded too well in the playoffs. I mean, one playoff series win, uh, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think again, can't stress enough. East is looking a little thin, and a team like this, I mean, I think they could be a 50-win team again, no problem.
You taking the over?
I'm taking the over, baby.
Oof. Yeah, I just think their heyday, they've hit their peak. I would have to go with the under on this. I feel like to me, 45 feels right for them, right in that range, maybe a little less. Um, like you said, it's dependent on a bunch of guys that need to stay healthy, that, like you said, have all kind of had some injury issues. I feel like Mitchell always seems to miss like 10 to 15 games a season for something. Um, I might be completely wrong on that. It's just, I feel like that's something I've seen him in street clothes or something. It's kind of happens. To me, the name that jumps out here is Karis LeVert. I think he had such big potential when he was in Brooklyn, and it just, and maybe I was wrong, but it just didn't seem like he fit in to whatever Cleveland was trying to run, and maybe never hit his stride. I just never really saw his name in highlights, and it just never popped like it was before. And granted, that was when obviously all the net stars were hurt, and there was a lot of eyes on the team. So, to me, I think him being a positive role player to go with Mitchell and Garland, I think is going to be key. But yeah, again, it's you got Marcus Morris. I don't even want to say Tristan Thompson, but I like Max Strus. I liked his kind of energy level, whether he's coming off the bench or starting. And yeah, there's no big names that are jumping out of here, but then I'm staring at a lot of big money at some names that I have a lot of question marks around. So, and I know Mitchell's a great player, and it's whether it's a Utah stigma. I just, like you said, it's haven't really been able to see him win more than one series in the playoffs. And maybe he did that in Utah one year where they might have won two series, but it's hard to see him being the number one. I always feel like he's a 1B, like he needs another star to go with him. And Garland's a great point guard, but he's not that next level kind of player that I would want to pair with Mitchell. So, yeah, that's my take. I'm on the under on these guys.
Hey, fair enough. One thing, real quick on Karis LeVert, I hear you. He's 29 now, so he's definitely in his prime. So it's sort of what you see at this point is what you get. Um, but I will say in the month of March when Mitchell was down, he averaged 7.4 assists a game. And as a six-man role, 5 assists overall in the season. He's a fun player to watch. He definitely knows how to get downhill. He's definitely not the biggest guy. He's not the best shooter that you'd want to see. But yeah, that's definitely the weak point in the
But even
Cavs game. Is
I was
I
gonna
shouldn't
say,
say the weak point. There's a few weak points. One that they're they got too many big guys and then too many point guards, and these
yeah, I was
spotted.
gonna say it proves that maybe he's more ball dominant. That he's somebody who needs the ball, and when Mitchell's on the floor, you're just not getting it, and maybe he's because I'm curious. And granted, you're not an AI bot, and like be like Bobby, tell me how many assists he had pre that Mitchell injury to see if that was something that he was already kind of doing off the bench, or if it was something he was like, hey, this is my chance now that there's a few extra minutes that I'm going to kind of push. And good on him for being someone who's not looking to shoot. If he's looking to pass, that's great. But if you're ball dominant and looking to pass, maybe you need to have a little bit more in your game, even though I mentioned earlier that that's not what a point guard is. So, I mean, yeah, I'm a little too much rambling, but yeah, that's my thought.
Well, I'm going to stick in the East for a little bit and make my way to the Midwest and talk about the Pistons, who have just basically been ever struggling, kind of always landing the fifth spot in the draft, seemingly almost every year, except for Cade Cunningham, who just hasn't quite been the guy that we want to see it to this point. But they're listed at 25 and a half wins. Um, and I think that this is the year that Cade Cunningham just absolutely has to step up. I say that as a guy he's also on a max rookie deal now, so I guess he doesn't really truly have to step up. He's going to get paid either way. But they went kind of all in this offseason. They had a bit of a sleeper, really good offseason. They picked up Tobias Harris. Did they overpay him? Yeah, but so did everybody else. And um, and then also
Good
picked
for
up,
him.
I mean,
Good for him.
yeah, seriously. I mean, he's a good player. You want to see him as as like a high end rotation guy for your team. He can definitely help contribute to winning. Um, he picked the team with the most cap space. I say that coming from Philly, who had the most cap space, but they weren't looking at Tobias Harris anymore. And then that said, his buddy Paul Reed, who's also in his prime, played some really great backup minutes uh, with Embiid, and he's kind of an undersized center, but he's a high energy guy, makes a lot of good decisions. Um, he's one of those guys where it's like he makes an impact on a game, but you wouldn't even know he was there. And then they, with from the Mavs, they were also able to get Tim Hardaway Jr. So they're trying to stack some, maybe not number one choices, but veteran, solid veteran guys behind this young core that they have, who just needs a little extra direction and consistency. I mean, they have the squad. They have a lot of talent on that team. They just need to come out with a little bit more toughness. I think that Simone Fontecchio was a really underrated signing. I don't. Maybe it was considered an extension versus like a free agent signing. I was no, no. I'm sorry. He was a free agent. That's right. Because I remember I was pissed that the Bulls didn't get him. I was like, man, we could have gotten that guy for cheap. I think he's a really great wing player. He's a good shooter. Good size for him. And then I'm really excited to see Asar's Thompson's sophomore season. A lot like his brother. He's just I mean, besides shooting, he does everything else extraordinarily well. If the dude was center size, he would be one of the more dominant centers in the league. But that said, 25 and a half, you guessed it. I'm taking the over, baby.
This team won 14 games last year. Yeah, Tobias Harris is a good pickup. I think the team is better, but I'm going under. to me, there's no. I just don't think there's enough firepower there. I'm trying to bring the teams back up to see this roster again. I would say you did leave out the Frenchman Evan Fournier is on the team as well. Had a decent run. So they definitely have plenty of veteran guys. And I still go with the under as much as I'm looking at guys that, again, and you'll have to give me Isaiah Stewart. They're one of their centers. I'm curious to know how decent he is, or what your thoughts on him, just because that's just somebody who has a lot of cap space they're taking. And I like Malik Beasley. So, again, there's lots of solid guys on this team that I feel like 25 wins on the nose, again, would be good. 11 game improvement. But I can't take the over. I see them still as being the seller of the East. But
thank you for reminding me of Malik Beasley. I totally forgot. He was another great veteran guy that they added to this team. They really tried to round out the roster. I mean, I think they're going to be, maybe if not a playoff team, I think they're going to be racing for one of those playing spots. I really do. And so, in which case, 25.5 is really underselling them. You mentioned Isaiah Stewart. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have too much to say about Isaiah Stewart because all eyes are on Jalen Duren at the moment. I mean, I would say Stewart's a solid player. Can kind of spread the floor a little bit as a big man, but Duren's a little bit more of a traditional center, a bit of a bruiser. But the fact that they even have that versatility with a young squad. Yeah, I'm excited to see what some of these lineups that they pull out are. I honestly could not tell you who their starting lineup's going to be.
Yeah, I was
I'll
gonna
have to
say
say
I wouldn't say it's not a loaded roster, but it's one of those a lot of the names. And I'm like, for someone who doesn't know a lot of names for NBA teams, this one has ones that I recognize. So I can see them being competitive, but it's like you said, who's going to lead this team if there's two injuries? And like if Harris and somebody else goes out, like, all right, where's this new offense coming from if Cunningham's not who people thought he was supposed to be? So, yeah, I'll be curious to see. I think they're a team to watch just because they're in the Midwest here. They're close. So maybe we'll have to make a trek to Detroit to watch a game or something. Maybe that'll be one of the
heck, they're coming to Chicago.
Off-topic conversations we need to have.
They're coming to Chicago probably at least twice a year as a division rival. So you don't even have to travel that far. Don't waste your time.
You should.
Don't waste your time flying.
You should know better. It probably takes me just as long to get down to the United Center as it probably would to drive to Detroit. So it definitely is easier to get to Milwaukee than to go probably 15 miles east of here.
Those are going to be some cheap last-second tickets, though. Those are going to be some really cheap last-second tickets. All right, so we'll appeal to a little bit more of the bandwagon crew out there, but we'll talk about the Warriors for a little bit. They are listed at 43.5 wins. They were 42.5 initially, so maybe Steph's hot shooting these past two games of the Olympics made them increase it by a game just because too many people were putting money on the over. But we certainly won't go too much in depth about them because we talked about them a little bit already. But even though they lost Klay Thompson, they added a whole lot of depth to their roster. They're definitely another team where I have no idea what their starting lineup's going to look like throughout the course of the season. I feel like it could be a revolving door for some guys, depending on how the season goes. I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over, baby. And for Well, for a couple reasons. A couple reasons. One, the aforementioned depth of the roster. They got a lot of good shooting. I think that they have enough defense, enough wing defense that they're going to be able to survive a regular season much better than they have for the past couple. But also just with the guys that they picked up, DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, and they already have guys like young talent like Pajemski. Um, they are, and gosh, sorry, Jonathan Kaminga. And then they have, some other veteran talent like, they still have Wiggins on the team, obviously. Gary Payton second. But these guys I'm mentioning, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Moses Moody for the young squad. But these guys I'm mentioning, eh, if you compile them together, that sounds like a really big trade. I either foresee their season panning out with the roster that they currently have, maybe some minor moves here and there before the trade deadline, or I foresee them being a team who's a big buyer this season. And it's always hard before the season starts to sort of figure out who's selling because you feel like everybody's sort of locked in and made the moves that they made, but injuries happen, disgruntled stars happen. Um, Tides change, and the Warriors are seated in a really good position to pick up a big name here. So I could definitely see them, in spite of how loaded the West is, as we've mentioned ad nauseum. I could definitely see the Warriors overperforming this year.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry you got the thought in my head. I'm looking at the roster right now, and that makes a lot of sense that they would kind of probably be one of the more active teams to try to find some sort of chemistry with Steph and Draymond, finding another Clay-esque type shooter that fits their budget with the trade pieces that they have. Because they're in a good spot to be able to develop some of this talent too if they want and or trade it away. Because I could easily see some sort of a trade package. Wiggins, Buddy Hield, throw in like a Kevin Looney, and you get like a
Well, you'd probably have to throw in one of the young players, which is where
no.
the Warriors have been hesitant. Obviously they've already missed the boat on Laurie Marketing, because he very intentionally signed a day after. Uh, with the new rules, if you for those who don't know, if you sign the max that you can extend with a team, which is 20% of more than what you're already making. Um, the team cannot trade you for 6 months after that. That's one of those. That's one of those random rules, and so they very much intentionally signed it. 5 months, 29 days or whatever before the February trade deadline, so that Laurie Marketing will be a Utah Jazz for the remainder of this season. But that said, sorry, I totally cut you off there.
No, and so I think that makes sense that they would be a mover, whether before the trade deadline. I would have to agree and probably go the over. To me,
We agreed on one.
I think there's a decent chance. I just see them as a better than 500 team. The only thing would be if they decide to make that trade or do some sort of movement that would mess with the chemistry, and they'd have like some sort of a losing streak, or there'd be some sort of an issue at some point in the season that would knock them back and end up being like a 42-40 team. But yeah, I don't see them not being over 500 and not being like a 45-47 win team. Even if you're dragging the corpse of Draymond and your weekend at Bernie's Steph, just get him out there and do whatever he needs to do. I think you're still going to end up with 40 plus wins. And then anything extra that you get from these other guys to hopefully win you 3-4 other games, I think that puts you over the top of the, was it the 43 that you had there? 43 and a half. So, yeah, I it's hard to not it's hard to think of them as an under 500 team or like at 500. I don't see that happening with Steph and Draymond on the team. Even if Draymond's not like going to be, he's the engine that helps energize that team to get them going. So, but yeah, I like Buddy Hield.
Yeah.
I think that'll be fun. And obviously being a Timberwolves fan, Kyle Anderson was a key piece. And I think his versatility, as slow-mo-ish as it is, I think he's a good piece for them. Will kind of be sneaky and kind of hide in corners and surprise people with timely shots for the Warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's gonna be a lot like a Sean Livingston for this team. Um, yeah, I think it's gonna be a great fit. All right, so moving on. Okay, we're sticking in the West. Another team that was originally listed at 42 and a half, still at 42 and a half. The Rockets, the Houston Rockets. Um, I talked about his brother, his twin brother already, but Amen Thompson, I'm really excited about his sophomore season. Obviously, he's not the headliner of that team. I'm also excited about Cam Whitmore's sophomore season. I feel like last year was the coming out party for the Rockets, and this year is when they get a chance to really put themselves on the big stage. Um, they obviously picked up Reed Shepherd in the draft, who a lot of people are saying is the is perhaps the most talented, the best pick out of this draft. He had amazing chemistry with Cam Whitmore, and you say, well, you're not even really getting to the meat of the starting lineup here, and that's the impressive part. Is these guys have depth on this roster. Um, Obviously, Fred VanVleet signed the big 3-year contract with them last year. Jalen Green, he, well, I guess time will tell on how long his tenure with the Rockets is going to be. But he put on a show at the end of last season. Hopefully that continues. They're just going down the line. I mean, I can't talk young talent enough of these guys. In terms of young talent, they may be the most loaded team, and so it tells you that they're going to either be around for a while, or again, they're going to be a good seller of the future, with having to offload some of these guys because they probably won't be able to afford it someday. But with Jabari Smith Jr. and Alperen Sengun coming back and hopefully coming back totally healthy. I just feel like the sky's the limit for this team. Are they going to be like a top 4 seed this year? Probably not. But at 42 and a half, obviously the Vegas is predicting them to be a bit of a playing type team. I would not be surprised if they can string together uh, enough of a run to put themselves up in the top 6. I know that's my big take for right now. But this Rockets team, they're only going to get better. They were already a decent team last year. I think they won. Was it? Did they go exactly 500 last year? Let me double check that for you folks. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they
were
were
exactly
41 and
500.
41.
Yeah, they were exactly 500 last year. They had a good draft, and their young talent is, I think, it's only gonna meld together even better this year.
Yeah, no, I'll keep it brief. I just looking over the roster again. Not real. I thought they did much worse. Obviously, I wasn't paying too much attention to Houston last year.
They're a
But
bit of a
yeah,
sleeper. They
they're
started out the season poorly too.
it's like you said, the team it's like the Pistons. I think they're maybe the Pistons of the West of being obviously I said the Pistons weren't going to win 25 games, but I think
Mhm.
this team is just as much loaded, if obviously much better, um, with some decent star power. Reggie Bullock, Fred VanVleet. I think those guys at least know how to get up their own shots. I'm sure Bullock's not going to be as big of a role, but Jeff Green. There's a lot of names that are like. I feel like if you put out a second squad of these guys, they're going to at least be able to match or better any other bench that's out there. Granted, the West is going to be deep, but I think, like you said, I could definitely see them escaping the play in. I could see maybe a 6 seed, like you said, getting over the hump. I wouldn't go too much over 42.5. I think they're still gonna have some struggle. And again, I think this is another team as long as they stay healthy. But yeah, I'd be surprised if they wanted to start selling all this. I think they've made a lot of moves already the last few years to kind of compile all of this, and then let's obviously you had a good season last year, but let's shake out and kind of see what other young talent is going to be able to kind of rise to the top from what you got, and I guess you wouldn't really trade away your bad stuff, but I think just this looks like a solid team kind of moving forward.
Yeah. I foresee the correction coming, and I did sort of sell them as like the best young talent team, perhaps rivaled by the Oklahoma City Thunder, who already sit atop the West. So I don't want to get too carried away, folks. All right, I don't mean it. No, but the Warriors and the Rockets are probably going to be competing for a very similar spot. I can see that being a big rivalry once again this season, just to add fuel to the fire for Rockets fans. But anyway, I suppose
Yeah, sorry.
lastly, we'll bring it back out east one more time. This is the highest. This is the team with the most amount of projected wins in terms of over under per ESPN bet. The Milwaukee Bucks at 50 and a half, 50.5. Um, they they kind of had like a sneaky good offseason. I think maybe I've mentioned before on the pod, Gary Trent Jr. They picked up on a minimum. That was one of the most underrated signings of the offseason. The dude has been a quality starter for, granted, a middling Toronto Raptors for years, but he's a good two-way player. He's a good perimeter defender. He can knock down threes. The guy can seemingly go off for 30 or 40 any given night. He's done it sometimes on back-to-back nights. He'll just kind of come out of nowhere. Um, the Bucks obviously were not the team that we were hoping them to be last year. Health played a little bit of a role in it. I wouldn't say so much during the course of the regular season, more so towards the end. But we're all waiting for that Giannis game chemistry to pop. And they added a little bit more wing depth as well with Taurean Prince and DeLon Wright, um, and which is much needed for them. Chris Middleton, obviously, concerning with his injury history. But I'd say overall for them, uh, you guessed it, I'm taking the over, baby. I'm taking the over. The Bucks have been they were 49 win team last year, but they've been a 50 plus win team for gosh, as long as I can remember in the modern NBA, and I don't think that that's going to change. Obviously, if yes, you can say this about any team, but in them in particular, injuries are going to be a big part of this. Um, but yeah, I mean, if they stay healthy, I think they can stay atop the West, and I think just like I mentioned with the Cavs, I definitely see them as a 50 plus win team. Now, granted, I realize if they win 50 games, you lose this bet, but no, I think they're going to be up there. I think they're going to be solid for a regular season.
I think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be over 50 wins. I go under on this. I think they were at 49 wins last year. I feel like Orlando and Indiana are probably going to steal 2 more wins away from them. I think there's going to be a nice log jam there from 3 to 7 probably in the East. They're probably all going to be about the same, not much different than they were last year. The teams, yes, they've all kind of reloaded, but to me, there's nothing of all of from Milwaukee, Cleveland, the Magic, Pacers, and Philly. I feel like mix them up they're all going to be right there. like 3-7. I think is you because otherwise you had Miami, Chicago, Atlanta. I think they're all still on the rise. Same with all the 5: Brooklyn, Toronto, the Hornets, Wizards, and Detroit.
Did you just put Chicago on the rise? Man after my own heart.
I think there's potential there, but I wouldn't see them jumping up higher outside. I think they're play-in tournament bound if is kind of their ceiling. So
Seemingly every year.
yeah, but for Milwaukee, I think there's potential of Giannis and Dame to kind of have like this pop, like all of a sudden, but time's running out. I think injuries are going to happen. These guys, I want to. Let's look at ages here. I should have looked at this quick.
They're an old team. There's no question about it.
And Giannis
that would be the one big argument against them, is that it's a lot of 30-somethings out there.
Yeah. And so Giannis is 29. So, yeah, he's obviously in his prime. Like, this is the time to win. But, yeah, Dame's 34. You got Brook Lopez, 36. Middleton's 33. Even as much as I think Bobby Portis is young, he's 29, same age as Giannis. And Gary Trent Jr. is your young guy at 25. So, yeah, I don't see them kind of making that next step. I think they're still right there and obviously can still make a run in the playoffs. But I don't see them like just getting over that hump and getting that 50 wins. I think they're going to maybe take a half step back and be like at 47 wins. And maybe the Pacers leapfrog them. But yeah, it's so tight in that the middle of that East. And so to me, it's hard you're going to take away extra wins from somebody else when you're still trying to find continuity in how these two work together. So especially they didn't play this summer like Giannis was with Greece. So I think you didn't really have a true off season to kind of try to gel and get together. So I think it might not be until the Christmas games until the Bucks are actually who we thought they were. So we'll see.
Well, I guess I didn't have this one on the list, but real quick, just as we got the Big Ten Rules fan here, they're listed at 52.5. At least they were in July. I'm not looking at the updated, but they're listed at 52.5 wins. Are you taking the over on the Timberwolves?
52.5. Let me do the math. Sorry. So they lose 30, 52 and 30.
Yeah.
Being a Minnesotan, I would say the under, just because I feel like 50, like that's a lot. Like I'm not that optimistic. I think
they were a 56-win team last year.
And that's even more reason why I think Edwards might make that next step up as a star in like the playoffs. But as far as the team being like competitive for that number 1 seed, I don't see that. I see them as like a 3-4, like, and making a run again. Like it's them, the Nuggets, the Mavs, and the Thunder. Like it's those 4 again. I as much as I would love to see everybody be all up in arms because of Steph or LeBron make a run, to me, I just don't see that happening. Those 4 teams are just too good, with too good of players that are just in the moment right now. The Suns might surprise somebody. To me, that, like I said before, I think whether it's all of a sudden Durant and Booker get hot and they actually play some defense, but I see those 4 as the top tier.
I mean, they did. I mean, the Suns did pick up Tyus Jones.
That's not enough. I love Tyus. He's a Minnesota kid, but that's not enough. I love that guy.
Is Mason Plumlee doing it for you though? How about that? What they, honestly, what the Suns need is for Bradley Beal to come off the bench. They need a $50 million a year six man, and that team will make a whole lot more sense. They're listed at 56. I'm sorry, 46 and a half. At least in July they were at 46 and a half, which is about where
Take
they were
Beal.
last. You take it. You take it. Hey, one of these guys, one of these behemoths have to fall. I think the Clippers will definitely be low, and
Oh,
they're only at like 40. I think was the 40 and a half was what they're listed at. Um, so the rest of the
yeah.
world's on board with that as well. But I had to bring up Minnesota because I wanted to at least spin Rudy Gobert in a more positive light, be the antithesis to everybody else on the internet, and bring up my trivia question brought to you
Ooh.
by T or Medical. Um, so, as I'm sure you know very, very well, Rudy Gobert is a four-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner. He holds the record tied with two other players. Hopefully this will be an easy one, but tied with two other players for most Defensive Player of the Year awards with four. Who are the other two?
Jordan and Kobe.
Defensive Player of the Year? Rudy
Didn't
Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year. MJ had, I don't think Kobe had a defensive player. MJ had one in '88 when he was one of, geez, I think it's like three people ever to win a Defensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season. But
hmm,
um,
I thought he won more. Uh, Dikembe.
oh yeah, that's one.
uh,
Slightly after Dikembe, overlapping eras. You would
yeah,
think of this guy as purely a defensive player. This guy should win the award, no question about it.
Yao.
Definitely not Yao Ming. I'm
After
not sure Yao can stay on the floor long enough for that
that's
to
true. That's
happen.
very true. I just was thinking.
Unlike Yao, this guy was very undersized at center, but it didn't really matter when they were going up against the Lakers in
I want to say
was
like
it like
Kevin Willis or something, but I know that's wrong. I give up. I don't know. I can't think of it.
Big Ben Wallace?
Oh yes.
Deservedly so.
Should have known that one. Oh well.
Spoiled again. Spoiled again.
Yeah. I guess we'll end this. We're way over our normal time, and this
If
will
you guys are
probably.
still listening, God bless you. You really like basketball. Keep on, keep coming, keep coming.
Or just want to be bored with us. So I've been mulling this hot take, and I want to see how it is received by you, and will probably be a to be continued into the next episode, just because this will probably tail off into something else. But in my head, I have 5 players in the last 45 years, since 1980 is where I'm cutting this off. So there's 5 players that I feel are the most instrumental in my personal basketball journey of life, and how they, in my echelon of how they fit in with me. And so I guess it's kind of the GOAT debate as far as everybody considers. And it's taken me, I've had a shift in my mindset over the last, I want to say 6 months or so, just as far as what I've been thinking. And so my rankings for my top 5 go as follows. Number 5 is Shaq. I think Shaq is the most dominant player that has ever stepped foot on the basketball court. No one was ever able to stop him. And I just think he changed the way teams defended and treated him on the floor. And no different than a few of the people that I'll mention in a second, just of how he changed the game. But just as far as when I watched, it was one of those, like, he was amazing to watch from LSU on and kind of going forward. Next, I have a tie. And this is where the controversy starts. So I have tied for third. I have Steph and LeBron. And to me,
Okay.
Steph has now caught LeBron. I think after that performance and just the fact of what he's changed the game. Like you go to an AAU game, they're playing like Steph Curry. And I think I don't know if I sent it to you, but someone like me who's 5'8" can look at Steph Curry who's like 6'1", 6'2", and be like, I can still emulate that I'm him. I can't really do that with LeBron or Kevin Durant. I can pretend in my head and say, I'm like Steph Curry. I can go out and shoot these threes and kind of do that. And I remember watching this pre-Steph Curry. Oh, you're good. that and just his ability to kind of change the game itself. He's not dominant, and obviously that was on display in that gold medal game of LeBron and Steph. I think their greatness kind of showed through of how equal they are. Like they almost needed each other. Everybody keeps saying since then that we want to have them on a team together just because it'd be so fun to watch them play. And I think the difference with LeBron versus the two that are left is that he's not a killer. To me, LeBron at the end of the game is looking to get somebody else the ball. And yes, some of Jordan's most iconic ones are him kicking it out to Steve Kerr for that three. But to me, it's LeBron.
That was the exception, though.
Yeah, and I think that's
those moments were the exception. Yeah,
caught everybody off guard. So LeBron, to me, is an amazing player. Like I'm proud to have him on the shirt. Like to me, it's by far watching him was just amazing through this tournament. But to me, he's just the reason that I think everybody doesn't put him on that echelon is because he's not looking to stomp you out. I looked at like the finals, like the guy went to 8 consecutive finals, which nobody else, granted, aside from maybe Bill Russell and some Celtics, has ever been able to do. But he never finished off a guy or a team. Like Jordan, it was always in 6 games. Like never went to 7. He always took care of you in 5 or 6 games. Kobe, there were some sweeps. There was a loss to the Celtics, obviously, in 7, and that was about the only. I think that was the only one that won 7. So I have LeBron at 3 and Steph at 3. And this is where I think my hot take is I have Kobe above Jordan. To me, it's I know it's shocking to think of, but the fact that it took Michael until he was 27 to win an NBA title. Yes, you had mentioned before, Kobe fell into a spot that was good and won at 21, 22, and 23. The fact that he did it at the beginning of the social media age as well, to me, his spotlight was bigger than, like, especially LeBron's. Like, when he came out, we were watching high school games on ESPN. Like, people barely remember Jordan's shot at North Carolina to win the national championship. But the thing that kind of sets Kobe up ahead was everything that he did after the game. Jordan didn't win an Oscar. I think the biggest thing is, yes, I think we had that moment when Kobe died, but in my head I keep thinking, if Jordan died, would there have been collectively the same emotional response of how people were kind of affected by that? And I think a lot of it was post Kobe's playing career, he kind of instilled in us this Mamba mentality. Like, I think it was his ability to kind of connect with us through social, which Jordan has never done. And I think we kind of had a relationship with him before or after his game was over. We all hated Kobe when he came out. Like, this guy's trying to take over Jordan's kind of era and aura. And yet we kind of slowly were like, okay, he's proven himself. He's doing this. It makes sense. All right, I kind of like him. All right, he's awesome. He's retired. Oh, man, I can't believe he put up this 81 or the 60 in his last game. It's like, and then all of a sudden he kind of has this post-career, like, love story with all of us. Like, to me, whether he's doing speaking tours and everything that he was doing, he just became so much more impactful on people. When when I went and bought this shirt and the one for you in Los Angeles, people who aren't basketball fans are telling me that one hurt, like that one hit me differently. And I wasn't a fan of his when he played, but it was all the stuff that he did afterwards because of the inspiration and the different things of kind of the way he let people in. And you could kind of see like, this is how you can be one of the greatest of all time, where Jordan's not going to do that. LeBron's not going to do that, nor do you really want to be. No one's wanting to be LeBron's personality, where he's kind of super extrovert. Kobe was one of those. He was an introvert, but yet he kind of near the end kind of opened up and shared a lot more with. And so I think that's what kind of had that effect on people, where they had that emotional attachment to him, which, long story short, sorry to ramble, but I think that he has that impact on people more than just he was awesome. He was that killer. He did everything that you wanted to off the court. He seemed, I was about to slip up. He was a family man. Obviously, he had the ups and downs in the Denver trial, which kind of made it raw and kind of tore him down. And we kind of then realized, like, okay, he's trying to be better. However that is, it's obviously the American second chance story. So I just think Kobe has had a bigger impact on a lot of people on the basketball stage than I feel like Jordan's just greatness for the game kind of was something that I think blinded a lot of people to what Kobe was and at what we lost.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely some good points. I would love to counter, but boy, that might be a whole another episode. That might be a whole series.
Yeah.
If I'm being
I might
honest,
have to cut. I'll cut this part out, and we'll do this as a whole separate piece, and let you have a rebuttal.
I don't know that I've ever really thought about the greatest player of all time. I mean, I don't know. I suppose I've watched some Michael Jordan games, but yeah, no, whew, there were some honorable mentions too that you left off there. I'm actually I love your list. I absolutely love your list. I don't love the order necessarily, but I do love your list because there was some really good guys you left off the Mount Rushmore there.
Well,
Um,
I've got one that I'm pointing the wrong spot. KG, like, to me, is one of those I could throw in. There's lots that we could have in there. Tim Duncan. There's plenty that are well deserving of being on that list, but that's my list.
well, you give me a moment to go back to the drawing board, and we'll hash this out. We'll hash this out in proper form. I promise you.
Sounds good. Well, we're hitting over 90 minutes. We can wrap it up there. I know we both have rambled on and on. And again, like Bobby said, if you are still listening, thank you. If you're still watching, thank you. Why? But thank you. But we will come back to you soon, as long as I don't kick my computer off my stand, with more basketball in-depth knowledge. Probably a couple episodes before the start of the season. Since it's end of August, we've got until mid-October. So we will probably come at you with a few rebuttal episodes to let Bobby go on a rant and give his top picks through September, and we will discuss all of that. So, but thank you for watching.
As always, folks, I just want to say real quick, as always, folks, if you want us to shout out your company, your endeavor, whatever it is that you need to be known more about, let the world know. Let us put you on our pod here. We need more motivation to keep doing this. Well, I guess we don't need more motivation, but feed us,
No.
please feed us. And thank you everybody. As Ronnie said, thank you everybody for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.